Hello everyone, and welcome to this Ask the Expert session where you can ask us anything on Windows Virtual Desktop. We have our technical team here ready to answer your questions, share insights, and hear your feedback. So how do you engage with us? It's pretty simple. Any question you have, put it in the chat window. The questions will appear to all attendees once our moderator approves it. If you like any video, give it a thumbs up. Sorry, if you like any question, give it a thumbs up so it gets the upvote and it pops into everybody's queue. And we have experts here who will be answering questions verbally on the video. We also have an amazing panel of experts from our product team, from our global black belt team, from our MVP community who are on hand and will be answering questions to you on chat as well. Before we jump in, note on the etiquette. This session may be recorded. Please do not spam or post any inappropriate comments in the chat. And please adhere to the Microsoft Code of Conduct. I'm going to leave this up here for a few seconds for you all to read. Awesome. So let's do, I'm going to do a quick round of introduction for our experts here. My name is Shankar Shivdasan. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager in Windows Virtual Desktop. This is my photo before my last haircut. We also have Peter Wilben from our Windows Virtual Desktop product team, who's a Principal Product Program Manager. Pavitra Thiruvengadam also from the Windows Virtual Desktop product team, Senior Program Manager, and John Federico, Senior Product Marketing Manager with Windows Virtual Desktop. So a really great panel of experts here. And let's get started and let's start taking some questions. All right, so looking through the questions here. So first question for you, Peter. Are apps that are deployed through MSIX app attach able to talk to each other?
It's a good question. As far as I know, I would probably have to check with Stefan, who's driving most of this. But as far as I know, it's possible to have the apps that are delivered within a session for a user to communicate with each other. So yes, it's possible.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question is to John. I will generalize this question. Generally, to use Windows Virtual Desktop, what kind of licensing do you need?
Yeah, that's a great question, Shankar. So for Windows Virtual Desktop, it really depends on one of two things. Are you virtualizing Windows Server RDSH or Windows 10 in Windows 10 multi-session or Windows 7, depending on your needs? So for Windows Server, you just need an RDS cal with active software assurance. If you're going Windows 10 multi-session, you'd want a Windows 10 E3 or above. So that's E5 as well as the education SKUs, A3, A5, and the frontline SKUs that come along with Microsoft 365 SKUs as well. So the entire Microsoft 365 set are available for WVD with the exception of a few. But we have a lot more information on our webpage at aka.ms/WVD. You can go to the pricing page and it'll outline every single license that is eligible for WVD.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Pavitra, are there any major feature differences between WVD in commercial versus in Azure government?
There are no feature differences between commercial and Azure government. We have to maintain parity between Azure government and commercial, but the features will potentially have maybe 1 or 2 months delay reaching Azure government from commercial. But overall, there shouldn't be any difference in getting the right set of features in Azure government and commercial.
All right. Next question to you, Peter. We have users who use HTML5 client, and the limitation is basically there is no redirection in the browser. So is there a way to do things like printing and AV redirect if you're using an HTML5 client, or do you need the thin client for it?
Yeah, there's some limitations on what we can do with HTML5. It's just the technology that a browser delivers and there are certain restrictions. So for an optimal experience, what I'd recommend is to look at the Win32 client, because with that, we can give you the best experience. One of the things I personally like is that it integrates with your start menu. So even if you install it, you configure it once, and from that point on, you can find all your virtualized apps and settings, all your applications and desktops in your start menu. Like those are things that we will, well, I wouldn't say never, but it's very difficult to use standards like HTML5, which are not designed for those purposes, to deliver the same experience. So while we're constantly working on new virtualization redirections, we're kind of bound on what we can do with HTML5.
Got it. Thank you for that answer. Pavitra, can we upgrade deployments to the new ARM integration? And so for folks who, to set some context, we have a new update where you can maybe an integration with the Azure portal and ARM, so you can deploy Windows Virtual Desktop through the portal and manage it through ARM. So the question is, for customers who are on a previous deployment, can they migrate to this new ARM model?
Yes, you can definitely migrate to the new ARM-based model for Wbd. We have two modes of migration. One is the automated migration, the other one is the manual migration. Some customers actually fall directly into the manual migration set of scenarios, and all of that has already been documented and updated in our public repo. So please take a look at it. It should be under concepts or under how to. For the automatic migration, we still are working on the tool, and the availability roadmap is already updated in aka.ms/wbd roadmap.
Awesome. Thanks, Pavitra. John, here's a question. I'm going to generalize this one too, but in general, we offer Windows Virtual Desktop. We also have Citrix and VMware options. How does a customer think about which one to pick and when?
That's a great question, Shankar. And I think what we really did with our partnerships with Citrix and VMware was we were trying to make it easy for customers to go from what they're using today on premises to an Azure-based deployment or a hybrid deployment using both on-premises and Azure-based session hosts. So for Citrix customers, the most logical and easiest path is to use Citrix cloud services like Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service in conjunction with Windows Virtual Desktop. And that's a very easy step for most Citrix customers. You just have to connect with your partner Citrix account team and your Microsoft account team and be able to help you with that. For VMware customers using Horizon today on premises, you can use Horizon Cloud on Azure with Windows Virtual Desktop. So really, you can use them with Azure and on premises, all in Azure, but it's really the same IT tools, the same end user clients that your organization's used to using, which is the beauty of being able to use Citrix or VMware solutions as well with Windows Virtual Desktop.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer. Peter, we talked about Start VM on Connect feature. There's a question on asking for more to learn more on that feature, and how does it work?
Yeah, the Start and Connect feature is great for a few reasons. First of all, I think the naming, we did it right, because it's fairly easy to explain what the feature is about. If a VM is in a deallocated or shutdown state, with the Start and Connect feature, you can make sure that, as the name suggests, the VM will just start up whenever you connect. And the cool thing is that it will allow you to save costs, because you don't have it running if you're not using it. And if you configure the power settings correctly, you can just make sure that when that machine or that VM is idle, it can disconnect the user, and potentially after an interval that you configured will shut down. So that's a great feature, and you can find more information on our docs pages if you're interested. So go definitely look into it. It's a great way to save some budget.
Awesome, thank you. Pavitra, this is a question for you. This is about updating VM image. So can you update the VM image and refresh all the hosts in the host pool, or do you need to create a whole new host pool if you need to deploy a new VM image?
As of last week, you can actually use the current add VM workflow on the portal and actually add new VMs with an existing image if you want to on the same host pool. In that workflow, you will be creating new VMs, but keep the same host pool, and you will have to switch the drain mode of the VMs having the old image, and ensure that the VMs that have the new image have the drain mode disabled so that they can actually take user sessions. That is one way of updating, but there are other multiple ways of updating. You can just take an existing image, update it, and roll it out to existing VMs, even maybe using SCCM or any other management solution that you want to. That is another way of doing it. And the last way is your choice. If you want to, you can go ahead and set up a host pool specifically with the new image and allow users to access it. But I think that will actually entail a lot more work, given the fact that you will have to also provide new app groups and publish users to app groups. So I would suggest that that is a last resort that you should be taking. You can either use the add VM workflow to update your host pool, or you can use another third party or SCCM kind of a service to actually update existing VMs in your host pool.
Awesome, thank you. John, here's a question for you, and this is, I think, asking for a general tip on reducing cost. If a user logs off of a VM, do they still get billed, or do you need to do something else?
So I'll take this to start, but I'd also love to have Pavitha or Peter jump in after me. But initially, if the user just logs off, it's really about whether or not the virtual machine is running. So if the virtual machine continues to run, then you will continue to pay. So you really want to implement policies and procedures that shut the VMs down completely. The user disconnections is how you get to that state, but if the VM is running, you will be paying. But I'll look to Pavitha and Peter to provide any additional color on how exactly you might be able to achieve that easily.
Yes, so as John said, you're only going to incur costs if the VM is up and running. Now, if you have only one user per VM, then when the user logs off, there is nothing stopping you from shutting down the VM. And then the next time the user wants to log in, it's up and running. And so you are not paying for the downtime of the VM at all. And this is easily achievable by using our scaling tool today, and any other features that we're going to be adding in, which will be available in the roadmap. But that is the only way that you're going to be incurring cost when VMs are up and running.
Great. So Peter, this is a question for you. In fact, I'm going to combine two questions into one. So the question is on, can we use can we use Azure Firewall with Windows Virtual Desktop? And can you also install MD-ATP on Wpdbms?
Okay, so both are security related questions for sure. Yes, you can. So both, the answer is yes. For the first one, for the Azure Firewall, we actually made it a lot simpler because we got a lot of questions from customers and partners saying, what kind of FQDNs or what kind of IP addresses should we be whitelisting? And maintaining that list could be an extensive job. So what we've done is we added specific, let's say, tags, which for our service is called Windows Virtual Desktop. That should be easy to remember. But anyway, so you punch in just this tag, and from that point on, Microsoft will take care of making sure that the right IP addresses or FQDNs are behind that service tag. So that's one thing. The answer is yes, and we made it a lot easier for you to manage. Then the second thing is about Microsoft Defender ATP. For Microsoft Defender ATP, it depends a little on which operating system you want to run. What we've seen so far is that the most popular operating system is Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session for various reasons. And what we've been working with the Defender ATP team, and right now we have this in a public preview, which means that anything up to 25 users per VM is supported. So you can use Microsoft Defender ATP up to 25 users. And in the background, what we're doing is making sure that we optimize the Defender ATP portal to show VMs which have more users logged on. And we expect that work to finish. So hopefully at the end of this calendar year or later this calendar year, we can announce GA, and that means you can assign as many users as you want, and Defender ATP will still be supported.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer. Let's see. Lots of good questions coming in. I think that's a good one. Pavitra, how should we think about disaster recovery with Windows Virtual Desktop?
Good question. So disaster recovery, there are two parts of it. One is the service related one, and the other one is all the resources that the customers make use of, right, and they own. So from the service side, we are completely covered for disaster recovery. We have database, all our dependent services, as well as our control plane completely highly available, and we run disaster recovery drills very often because we have to be in compliance. That is one of the biggest compliance criteria for us to be in GA. The second part of this is the customer-owned environment, how to set up disaster recovery. And the good news there is that we will have a document up and running by end of next week, so that you can actually take a look at all the different services that you will have to actually set up for high availability, which will include VMs, virtual network, user identities, any kind of profiles that you want, as well as app dependent services. For example, if you have a multi-layer app, you might want to have the server side of the app also highly available. And there are different technologies that you will have to use, different services that you will have to use to actually set up DR for each one of these items in your environment, but we will have a doc up and running going over all the available services that's going to help you, as well as going over different scenarios that you want to set up DR for. So look forward to it. Hopefully it will be available by end of next week.
All right. Thank you, Pavitra. So Peter, so single sign-on, I think we talked about that in our announcements today. The question is are we also thinking about enabling passwordless login?
Yeah, so what we're planning to do later this calendar year is to add single sign-on support for domain-joined VMs. So as you know, Wpd today only supports domain-joined VMs. So using ADFS, so if you already have ADFS, it could be great to kind of readjust it a little so it also supports single sign-on for Wpd. And next calendar year, we expect to deliver support for Azure AD joined VMs, and that's going to be deployed throughout the year. So we're going to introduce it somewhere in H1, and then throughout the year, we'll be adding additional features for Azure AD joined VMs. One of those features is single sign-on, and as part of that, you can also use additional credentials. So right now, we support username and password and smart card, but in the future, so later next calendar year, you can also expect other features or other credentials, such as Windows Hello for Business, phone sign-in, FIDO2 keys, you name it.
Awesome. Cool. So John, a question for you, and I see there's a bunch of these similar questions. Again, I'm going to club it together. But in general, about GPUs and will applications like Autodesk and AutoCAD, will they work with Windows Virtual Desktop?
Yeah, I'll start, and again, I'll kick it over to Peter after to provide some more clarity on maybe some of the testing we've done with specific applications. But the beauty of Wbd is you can choose any Azure virtual machine available in a region. So while there might be certain defaults in the flow that you might see in the Azure portal, you can customize the VM choice to anything you might need, whether that's an NV series or some high performance computing, or maybe a burstable SKU. So for GPUs, you just would go into, for example, the N series VMs and choose those that would best match the workload, the multi-session density, if you're going that route. Now, it's a different question on what the licensing requirements might be with regards to NVIDIA licensing for GPUs. But with regards to support from a Wbd perspective, all VM types and many workloads are being used across Wbd, including graphics intense workloads. We actually just published a case study about a week ago from an organization called Petrofac that actually is using these for graphics intense workloads as well, that I encourage everybody to go check out to see how an organization is actually implementing. But Peter, if you have any insights regarding things like Autodesk and others.
Sure. No, I think you already gave a great answer. So you can, right now, you can pick a VM size or VM type that has a dedicated GPU card, which is typically required for these type of workloads. Now, we've already introduced a bunch of features that might be interesting, like GPU partitioning, for example, where you can kind of split the GPU and assign it to specific users that require it for a given workload. On the other side, we also are making new investments that, for example, allow you to change between right now TCP and then optimized for more of these workloads by switching to UDP. And that's something that we're working on. Because TCP is great, you can do things like reverse connect, which allows you to make sure you don't have to open any inbound ports. That's awesome, and a lot of security-oriented people love that story, but it can have an impact on specific workloads like the ones that we're talking about now. So we're researching how we can introduce new performance optimizations to make the experience even better.
Awesome. So there is a lot of excitement I can see around MSIX app attach coming to the Azure portal. It's a question, Peter, for you again on the roadmap for MSIX app attach and any ideas on when it will be generally available.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, we always have to be careful with announcing when something is generally available, because if we slip a month, then the whole world goes crazy. So what I can say is that we expect to have a public preview later this calendar year. And that's probably the best I can promise right now. It will be great, so stay tuned, and we'll make sure that everyone gets to know as soon as it goes in public preview.
Got it. All right, let's see. This is a question I see a lot too. And on Pavitra, question for you on printing, and how does printing work with remote sessions in Windows Virtual Desktop?
I will have to defer this to Peter.
Peter, you're on.
Sure. Yeah, with printing, there's two options. So one is you can use the redirection of your printer. So that means if you install a printer local on the device you're connecting from. So let's say you have a Windows device, just a physical device here, which, let's say it's Windows 10. You install a printer locally on that device. And then if by default, we redirect that printer into your remote session. So it will show up in your remote session, and all your print jobs will then go through the protocol and will be redirected to your local printer. So that's an option available today. The other thing you can look into is universal print, which is a feature that we announced probably a couple of months ago now, and that works slightly different. So instead of redirecting all your printer jobs via the local client, it goes to an Azure service that communicates either directly with your printer or using let's say a proxy kind of piece of software which runs somewhere in your local network. And the key benefit of that is that you can also use non-Windows endpoints to connect to Windows Virtual Desktop and still have a good print experience. So I'd say there's two options available today. Depending on your requirements, go left or right.
Got it. All right. So Pavitra, this one is right in your domain. The question is, I see that Wbd metadata is stored in US. Will it be possible in the future to store it in other regions?
Yes, so we are in the roadmap. You can see that we will start supporting EU as a region later this year, if not early next year. And that will be the first geography that we will be supporting. It will be a geographical level storage. We will not be supporting regional level storages. But essentially, as long as you select a region in Azure portal for you to create your host pool, we will select the associated geography where we will store your service metadata. And that should be available later this year in EU. And once it's available, then we will publish the roadmap for the rest of the geographies under Azure.
Got it. And I have one more question, Pavitra, for you. It is similar to the last question I think we answered. In that, is there any difference between Wbd capability across tenants, and this person is specifically in GCC High?
In GCC High, as opposed to commercial, there are no differences. We will support all features in both. We're not planning on supporting preview features in GCC High at present. Preview is going to be in commercial, but all G8 features will be supported in GCC High 1 month after it goes GA in commercial. Was that just one part of the question? I thought there was another question, the part of the question, Shankar?
No, that was it. I just the question was a general question across Azure tenant, but I realized that the person was asking specifically GCC high, so I want to club it together.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. Peter, a question on. I think this is related to our announcement today on managing WBD with MEM, and whether there are policies that we can use to enforce that WBD is fully available to manage devices in Intune that are compliant.
Yeah, what you can do today, so if you use Intune for Windows in Enterprise, so not multi-session, but Windows in Enterprise, as long as that VM is hybrid Azure AD joined, so that means AD joined, and then it's registered to Azure AD, which you can do using a policy. Then you can use Microsoft Endpoint Manager to configure those conditional access policies, and they would work just like you would expect with physical devices. Now, the one thing that we're still working on is Microsoft Endpoint Manager support for Windows and Enterprise multi-session. And we expect to have a public preview for that type of configuration later this calendar year. And then as part of the public preview, we'll also have conditional access.
Great. The next question, I'm going to start with you, Pavitra, but I don't know whether you or Peter are the right person for it, but let's go with you, Pavitra. This is a question on Teams and AV redirect in Teams. The question is, when are we going to extend the capability to other clients, especially Mac?
Peter, you want to take it?
I'm also not 100% sure because it's mostly owned by our client team, and I don't think we have anyone representing from that team in this session. So I think it will be hard for us to answer at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah, I know we can't really share timelines, but I know they're working to add the AV redirect capability to other clients. So we can come back on that. Cool. Let's see. So we got 3 minutes, so we probably have like time to take 1 or 2 questions at max. So let's see. We went through this. But yeah, so there's a hypothetical question for you, Peter, here. So let's say you have 4 users in a pooled VM with 2 CPUs and 8 GB of RAM. How does the memory allocation work with multi-session? Will each user get 1 GB of RAM at most for their operations?
Okay, so yeah, it's all about the noisy neighbor scenario. That's what I think this question is, the question behind the question. It's like if you have one user that kind of swallows up all the resources, how does it impact another user that's logged on to the machine? And what we've seen so far is that typically it doesn't happen too much on the memory side because Windows can typically just divide the amount of memory quite well against all the users or across all the users that are authenticated and logging on from the same VM. It's more interesting with CPU. So even though the question is about memory, that is something typically we don't see too much issues around. The more interesting thing is CPU. So let me just spend 10 seconds around that one. What we've introduced is something which is called fair share. And that means that assume you're the only one connecting to a multi-session VM. And that thing has 4 CPUs. You can use all 4 CPUs, 100%. Now, as soon as the second user connects and also starts using the CPU, then we built in logic called fair share, and that will just divide the existing free CPU cycles amongst those 2 users. So each gets 50%, and that's just done on the fly. So I think it's a very great feature to make sure that you don't have the noisy neighbor syndrome that we just talked about.
Awesome, thanks, Peter. So we are nearly at time. I will just flip my slides to go to the last slide, which has some useful resources for everybody to use. And all right, so we have like the links to the blog post, which has all our announcements in case you missed our announcements coming out at Ignite. We have a couple of deep dive sessions, both by Pavitra and Peter, on security and management. And you can also sign up for our upcoming webinars. And if you haven't started, we have Microsoft Learn and a new quick start guide that you can use to get started with Windows Virtual Desktop. So thank you again all for participating, and hope you have a great Ignite.